The email landed in my inbox like a silent gut punch, even out here in the dust and heat. I was still in the desert, detached from everything but the mission. 13 years of marriage, gone. Just like that. Ended in a cold PDF attachment. My name's Nathan, 42 years old, Staff Sergeant with the 82nd Airborne. I'd been boots on the ground in Kandahar for 4 months, pushing through patrols, living the suck, when Becky decided she was done waiting. The subject line read, "Let's be adults about this." 3 short sentences in the body. She'd already consulted lawyers. She'd already decided our joint assets would be hers. She'd already moved her new boyfriend, Jeremy, into our house back in Spokane. I read the email twice, the words flat and lifeless on the screen. Closed my laptop. Took a shower in the communal stall, the cold water barely cutting through the grit. Got dressed for my shift, Kevlar and M4. Said nothing to anyone. When I got back to my bunk that night, dog-tired but wired, I replied with one word. Understood. That was it. No argument, no begging, no threats. Wilson, my bunkmate, sensed something was off, but he was too squared away to press it. "You good, man," he mumbled, not looking up from his worn copy of The Art of War. "Yeah," I said. "Just some stuff back home." He just nodded, and that was the end of it. Military guys know when to leave things alone. We deal with enough without piling on another man's problems. Truth be told, I wasn't surprised. 6 months before deployment, things had shifted. Subtly at first. Becky stopped asking about my day, started working late at the dental office where she answered phones, started hitting the gym 3 times a week but never seemed to break a sweat, never looked tired. New clothes, new friends I never met, new passwords on her phone. I didn't confront her, didn't start checking her messages or tailing her. That's not who I am. But I wasn't blind either. You learn to read the terrain. You learn to trust your gut. So, I made some quiet, preemptive moves of my own. Nothing dramatic, just common sense precautions. Like a good squad leader, I secured my flanks. Important documents, my birth certificate, our marriage certificate, the house deed with only my name on it, thanks to that VA loan, a huge benefit for us military folks. All my benefits paperwork. I moved it all to a secure, climate-controlled storage unit across town. Then I added my grandfather's old military-issued watch and my mom's silver locket, the things that actually mattered. I also opened a separate account at a different bank, off her radar, and started diverting part of my pay there. Not enough for her to flag it, but enough that I wouldn't be financially stranded if things went south, which my gut told me they would. The night before I deployed, she hugged me at the airport. "Stay safe, okay?" Her eyes were dry. It felt like she was seeing off a co-worker, not a husband heading into a combat zone. I should have known then, but a small part of me, the civilian part, I guess, still hoped I was wrong. I wasn't. What she didn't know was that I'd prepared for this moment. And what she didn't understand was this simple truth forged in the crucible. I never start fights, but I damn sure finish them. I met Becky at a friend's barbecue in 2010. I was home between tours, staying with my buddy Jason in Spokane. She was finishing nursing school, but ended up doing admin at a dental practice instead. "Less stress," she'd said. We were married 8 months later. Becky used to say she was proud of my service, though she never quite grasped it. Her dad was a bank manager, her brother a pharmacist. No military in her blood. She'd ask when I was going to get a real job, not realizing that after 15 years, the Army was my career, my life. Not just some temporary gig I was killing time at. We bought our house in 2014. Nothing fancy, but it was ours. 3 bedrooms, small yard, quiet neighborhood. The kind of place you dream about owning when you're freezing your ass off in a sandbox. My name was the only one on the mortgage, thanks to the VA loan. But I added her to the deed, because that's what married people do, right? You share things. My dad died a year after we got married. A heart attack shoveling snow. My mom passed 3 years later. Lung cancer. though she never smoked a day in her life. They left me some money, not a fortune, but enough that Becky and I could square away our student loans and still have a cushion. I deployed 4 times during our marriage. Iraq twice, Afghanistan twice. Each time I came home, Becky seemed a little more distant, a little more restless. Like she was playing a role she'd outgrown. "I didn't sign up to be a military wife," she told me once, after I mentioned possibly re-upping for another 4 years. "I'm tired of being alone all the time." I understood that. I did. But the Army was the only place I ever truly belonged. I was good at my job. People depended on me. That meant something. In 2019, the small things started piling up. Becky got irritated when I called during her girls' nights. Started talking about how her friend Melissa had divorced her husband and was living her best life now. Started making comments about how we didn't really have anything in common anymore. I suggested counseling. She said we were fine, just going through a phase. Then came the late nights at work. The weekends away with friends I'd never met. The new clothes. The gym membership she rarely used. I should have confronted her maybe. But that's not how I operate. Never have. My dad taught me to think before I speak, to be sure before I act. So I watched and I prepared, quietly. Because my gut, honed by years in hostile environments, was screaming that something was coming. And in this life, you learn to trust your gut. 2 weeks after that email, I was sitting in the mess hall, picking at some mystery meat, when my phone buzzed. Not a text from home, not an alert from the Intel guys. This was a notification from our bank app. It showed a significant shift in funds from our joint savings into a new, unfamiliar account. A substantial amount, almost everything that was left, now redirected. I set my fork down, the plastic tines clattering on the tray, and opened the app. Our savings, the $47,000 we'd built up over years of deployments and careful budgeting, was no longer in the joint account. It had been moved into an account I didn't recognize, solely in Becky's name. Murphy, one of the younger guys from my unit, glanced over. "Bad news, Staff Sergeant?" I locked my phone. "Nah, just some account stuff." He knew better than to push it. That night I called our bank from the base phone center. Had to use my secure line. Turns out Becky had been orchestrating this for weeks. Small changes at first, like she was testing the waters. Then larger ones. The big shifts, the ones that affected our core savings, started the day after I deployed. Figures. I hung up and stood in the hallway for a long time, listening to guys laughing, calling their kids, their wives, their parents. Normal life happening all around me, while mine was being systematically dismantled. That's when Wilson found me. "Heard from Alvarez you looked like you'd seen a ghost at dinner," he said, his voice low. "What's up?" I don't usually share personal stuff, but Wilson had pulled me out of a bad situation in Kandahar once. He was good people. I trusted him. "My wife has systematically moved our joint savings into her name and moved her boyfriend into our house," I said, the words tasting like sand. "Sent divorce papers while I was on patrol last week." Wilson didn't give me the usual platitudes. "No, I'm sorry. No, that's rough. No, you'll find someone better." He just looked at me, dead serious, and asked, "What's your plan?" "Not sure yet," I replied. He nodded. "Let me know if you need anything." That's a military guy's version of a hug. That night I couldn't sleep. My mind was racing, but not with anger, with calculations. I pulled out my laptop and logged into our home security system, something Becky probably forgot I could access remotely. The cameras showed a strange pickup truck in our driveway. A man I'd never seen before, walking our German Shepherd Daisy, using my coffee mug, wearing my Seahawks sweatshirt, the one I bought after our last Super Bowl win. And there was Becky, laughing in the kitchen, the one I'd renovated myself during my last leave. Something shifted inside me. Not anger, not rage, something colder, clearer, like the calm before a breach, This wasn't just about a broken marriage anymore. This was about a calculated personal takeover of my life back home. I closed the laptop and pulled out my phone. Made a list. Called James, Army buddy who became a lawyer, property law, good man to have in your corner. Review the VA loan terms, ironclad, hopefully. Contact Master Sergeant about emergency leave. Time to go home and secure my position. Review home title documents. Becky mentioned something about a new financial arrangement last year. Had to check that. Check the security on my military pension accounts. Protect the long game. I didn't feel sad anymore. I didn't even feel angry. I felt focused. Like I was planning a mission. This wasn't about emotion now. This was about strategy. At 0500 before my shift started, I sent an email to James with the subject line, "Need legal help, discreet and urgent." His reply came an hour later. "Call me. Secure line only." When I hung up from that call, I knew exactly what I needed to do. I didn't need to yell. I didn't need to threaten. I didn't even need to confront her. I just needed to wait and watch, and let her own actions reveal the truth. 2 months later, I was back on American soil. I didn't tell Becky I was coming home. No calls, no texts. Just checked into a dive motel in downtown Spokane under a different name and linked up with James. We met at a diner 10 miles outside of town, a greasy spoon that looked like it hadn't changed since Nam. "You look like hell," he said, sliding into the booth across from me. "Feel like it too," I replied, sipping the bitter coffee. James pushed a folder across the table. Everything we discussed: the house deed, loan documents, bank statements, and this. He pulled out a separate paper, crisp and official looking. "Found something interesting when I was digging into your financial records." It was a property equity agreement. My name, my address, and a signature that looked like mine. Except it wasn't. Not quite. Someone had tried to replicate it, but they missed the little details. The middle initial was wrong, and the stroke pattern wasn't mine. You learn to spot anomalies when you're sifting through intel. "Becky signed this?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. It was a statement, not a question. James nodded. 3 months ago, it granted a substantial equity line of credit against the house, which you alone hold the VA loan for. Your consent and genuine signature are required for that. Got an equity line against our house, then moved our joint savings and initiated divorce proceedings while I was deployed," I muttered, leaning back. "She's been busy." "It gets more complicated," James said, a grim smile playing on his lips. "She listed her boyfriend as a co-beneficiary on the new line of credit. Jeremy. Turns out he's got a history of financial maneuvers that raise eyebrows." I took a deep breath. "What are my options?" "Several," James said. "But first, you need to decide what you want. Full tactical objectives, Staff Sergeant." I thought about it, looking out the window at the morning traffic. "I want what's legally and ethically mine, and I want her to understand consequences, the kind that stick and expose the truth." James's smile widened. "Then here's what we do." The next day, I drove past our house. Jeremy's pickup was gone, but Becky's beat-up sedan was in the driveway. I parked down the street and watched for a while. Thought about knocking on the door, engaging the target directly. But that wasn't the plan. This was a long game. Instead, I drove to the bank. Met with the loan officer who had processed the equity agreement. A young guy, probably fresh out of college, eager to please. I showed him my military ID. Showed him the real signature on my driver's license. Then, with deliberate slowness, I laid out the questionable documents. His face went pale, like he'd seen a ghost. "I'll need to report this immediately," he stammered, already reaching for his phone. "I understand," I said. "I've already initiated a formal inquiry with the appropriate authorities. Just letting you know your institution is involved." That night, I got a text from Becky. "Who have you been talking to at the bank? Jeremy said someone was asking questions." I didn't respond. The silence was its own weapon. The next day, I went to the county clerk's office. filed paperwork contesting the equity agreement due to questions about its legitimacy. Registered formal notice that no further changes to the property's deed or associated financial instruments could be made without my direct, verified presence. I was locking down the objective. 2 days later, Becky called. I let it go to voicemail. Nathan, we need to talk. The bank called about the house. What are you doing? If this is about the divorce, we can discuss it like adults. Like adults? The same words from her email. The irony was a bitter taste. I still didn't respond. James called that afternoon. They've flagged the equity line and placed a hold on any funds drawn against it. And there's more. Your wife's boyfriend has been driving your truck, right? The F-150 in your name? Yeah. He got pulled over this morning, James said, a hint of satisfaction in his voice. For a significant driving infraction that's going to cost him. The vehicle was impounded, and it's going to be a substantial cost to get it out. Good, I said, a small grim smile forming. He also had some interesting personal items in the truck, James continued. Documents that suggest he was actively advising Becky on her financial maneuvers regarding the house, pushing for quick sales of distressed properties with other partners. I closed my eyes. He was orchestrating this with her. Looks that way. Authorities are reviewing the pattern of activity. I hung up and sat on the edge of the motel bed. This was getting bigger than I'd expected. Part of me, the old Nathan, the one who'd protected her, wanted to call Becky, warn her. Old habits. But then I remembered the security camera footage. My house, my dog, my life, being systematically leveraged. This was the path now. I couldn't turn back. And honestly, I didn't want to. Here's part 4 of the story, continuing with the compliance guidelines while advancing the plot to the wider network. Part 4, uncovering the deeper network. I met with the bank's internal review investigator the next morning. His name was Thompson, a short guy with tired eyes and a coffee stain on his tie. He looked like he'd seen it all. This kind of situation happens more often than you'd think, he said, spreading documents across his desk. One spouse sees an opportunity, especially when the other is deployed. It's a breach of trust that we see impacting military families. What happens now? I asked, cutting to the chase. We've placed a firm hold on the funds from that equity line of credit, he stated. But there's a complication. Some of the money has already been moved. How much? About half. $14,600. I leaned forward, my jaw tightening. Where did it go? Thompson hesitated, running a hand over his thinning hair. I'm not supposed to share that information, Staff Sergeant. It's internal protocol. It's my house. My name on that original VA loan, I reminded him, my voice low but firm. My financial future impacted. I need to know what I'm up against here. He nodded slowly, then turned his computer screen toward me. These are the transfers out of the equity account. I scanned the list. Multiple transfers to someone named Daniel Spencer. Not Jeremy. Someone else I'd never heard of. My operational instincts kicked in. This wasn't just a simple domestic dispute. This looked like a structured operation. Who's Daniel Spencer? I asked. Thompson shrugged. Not my department, Staff Sergeant, but you should ask your lawyer to look into these records. Fast. I called James as soon as I left the bank, giving him the name. Daniel Spencer, he repeated. Let me run a check. An hour later, he called back, his voice tighter than usual. Got it. Daniel Spencer is a real estate broker, specializes in quick transactions. He's known for moving properties fast, often facilitating deals where one party is eager for a rapid settlement. The realization hit me like a physical blow, a concussive shock wave. She was planning to use this to push the sale of our house? Looks that way, James confirmed. The deposits were likely part of an arrangement to get him moving on listing the property. But here's where it gets interesting. Spencer has done business with Jeremy Ryan before. Jeremy Ryan is... that your wife's boyfriend? Yes. They've closed 3 deals together in the past 2 years, James elaborated. All properties acquired from individuals going through divorces or with spouses in long-term deployments. Sound familiar? I sat down on a park bench, the cold metal seeping through my uniform. This wasn't just Becky leaving me for some guy. This was a calculated scheme, a systematic approach to exploiting vulnerable situations. Perhaps, James said carefully. I did some digging into Jeremy Ryan after your call this morning. He seems to have a pattern. He gets involved with people facing marital challenges or who have deployed spouses. In several cases I found so far, the individual's home eventually gets sold rapidly, often under circumstances that leave the other party at a disadvantage. Ryan typically gets a benefit from these arrangements, then moves on. And Becky? I asked, picturing her laughing in my kitchen. She was part of this manipulation? Hard to say, James mused. Maybe she was a target of his manipulation too, initially. Or maybe she was an active participant. But either way, she facilitated it. I rubbed my face, feeling the stubble. This wasn't just about Becky's personal betrayal anymore. This was something larger, something organized, and other military families had been impacted. They'd targeted us. They'd targeted my brothers and sisters in arms, exploiting their service and trust. That ignited a new kind of cold fury. What do we do? I asked, my voice flat. I've already contacted the appropriate authorities regarding potential patterns of predatory financial conduct, James stated, his tone serious. This crosses jurisdictions and involves situations impacting service members. They're interested, very interested. This looks like a broader pattern of exploitation. That night I sat in my motel room with a lukewarm beer, thinking about everything. Wondering if Becky had been part of a long-term deceptive plan, or if she'd just gotten swept up in Jeremy's manipulative scheme, an unwitting accomplice. Wondering if it even mattered now. My phone buzzed. Becky again. Nathan, please call me. The bank is saying something about issues with the house, and Jeremy is having trouble with his vehicle. I don't understand what's happening. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed, "Who is Daniel Spencer?" 3 dots appeared as she started typing, then stopped. Started again, stopped. Finally, I don't know what you're talking about. Significant funds, multiple transfers, house transaction plans. I wrote. No response for 10 minutes. Then, it's not what you think. I turned off my phone and went to bed. Tomorrow, the final phase of the operation would begin. The next morning, James called. Authorities want to meet. They've been observing Ryan and Spencer's patterns for months. You're not the first, Staff Sergeant, but your detailed account might be the key to clarifying their entire operation. For the first time since getting that email, I felt something close to satisfaction. Not because my marriage was over, but because the truth was finally coming out. I met with the investigators at their field office in Spokane, Agent Patel and Agent Donovan. They were sharp, focused. They recorded my statement, took copies of all the documents James and I had gathered. Your situation helps establish a consistent method, Agent Patel explained, leaning forward. It shows intent, organization, suggests a structured approach rather than isolated incidents. What about Becky? I asked, though the word wife felt like ash in my mouth. My ex-wife. The agents exchanged looks. We're still determining her level of understanding and involvement, Donovan said carefully. Did she ever mention financial strain? Any unusual pressure to change the house's status? I thought back. She kept saying we were house poor, that we should downsize. I didn't see the need. Our mortgage payments were manageable on my salary. Patel made a note. When did that start? About 6 months ago, around the time she must have met Jeremy. And the equity line? Donovan asked. Never discussed it with me, I stated. My consent wasn't genuinely given while I was deployed. They asked more questions, took more notes. When we finished, Patel handed me her card. We'll be in touch. In the meantime, do not engage with your wife or Ryan. We need to build this case carefully. I nodded. Understood. That evening, I drove to our neighborhood again, parking down the street from our house. Jeremy's truck was back. He must have resolved his vehicle issues. Becky's car was gone. My phone buzzed. A text from Becky. "We need to talk in person. Meet me at Riverfront Park tomorrow." I showed the text to James over breakfast the next day. "Don't go," he advised. "Nothing productive can come from talking to her right now." "I won't," I said, "but I want to know what she's doing today while she thinks I'm meeting her." We drove to our house at 9:30 a.m., parking across the street. At 9:45, Becky came out, got in her car, and drove away, heading toward Riverfront Park. "Now what?" James asked. "Now we observe," I said. 20 minutes later, a car pulled up. Real estate broker logo on the door. Daniel Spencer. Jeremy came out to greet him. They talked in the driveway, then went inside. "Should we follow them?" James asked. I shook my head. "No need. I installed security cameras last year, interior and exterior. They upload to cloud storage." James smiled, a slow, appreciative grin spreading across his face. "You didn't mention that before." "Never came up," I said, pulling out my phone. I opened the security app and angled the screen so James could see. Spencer and Jeremy were in our living room. Spencer was taking photos. Jeremy was pointing at features of the house. I turned up the volume. "Should list by the end of the week," Spencer was saying. "I've got an interested party already. A quick purchase, as usual." "How much?" Jeremy asked.